let's talk about eccentric strength, hamstring strength, and Nordics.
And some mistakes along the way.
Yeah. We really got serious about ramping our people up to being Nordically competent and actually getting good at that. When do you reckon we really?
10 months ago.
Yeah.
So probably middle of last year, early to mid last year, we were like, and a few people, we talked to a few physio friends and stuff like that, and they were just like, Swiss ball hammy is just not enough.
Yeah.
It's just not enough to really get the hammy eccentrically where it needs to be from a ACL point of view and from a hamstring tear point of view.
Yeah. And I think there's probably a level of complacency because we've had, so for me, with the exception of one athlete, 12 years of WNBL without a single player missing a single game to a single hammy injury. So that tends to breed a little bit.
Make you a little more relaxed about hamstring strength.
Yeah, it's not like there wasn't an impetus where it was like, oh my god, we're having problems. It was just like, yeah, but are we doing everything we could be doing?
Yeah.
I think that was
could we be better?
Could be better. Yeah. And there's the problem with the Nordics is that they're really hard, and there's always that concern of how do you
start them?
Yeah, how do you get going safely?
Yeah, because you go that first time and you're sore for a week. they can really hit you hard. Yeah.
And it was really good to start thinking about it because Argel's idea of doing the Nordic with the Swiss ball in front of you.
The video we put up a couple of weeks ago or last week.
Yeah. That was so smart. Like you can take the load out of it. You can chase the range, take the load out. There's all sorts of ways of attacking the problem. We should probably talk about why. So we've become a little obsessed with them because they're so brilliant for so many different reasons. We should probably talk about why they're such a big deal and how helpful they are. Do you want to start with fascicle length?
Let's start with fascicle length. So when it comes to hamstring strains particularly, the research seems to be not, and people are like, my hamstring feels tight is often what they say, and then it tears and they say problems. Often it's not actually tightness per se, but it's a lack of eccentric strength, because what goes with that eccentric strength is fascicle length. So the fascicle is, we have the sliding filaments inside the muscle, and each of those becomes a fascicle. The longer they are, the more strength that has
so
at a longer
range. The little mini sections of muscle are.
Each little fascicle, which is like each cut up segment of the muscle, the longer those are individually, I think they measure in millimeters or micrometers or like
very small.
Tiny small amounts, but the longer they are, that's directly correlated to your risk of hamstring injury.
Yeah.
So, and the best way to improve that
longer is lower, so it's inversely correlated.
Yeah. So long and strong is effectively the best way to become inoculated to hamstring injuries. And so what happens is the best way to improve that is through high load eccentric training, because that's sort of, in effect, it rips the muscles apart, and when they grow and when they recover and when they regenerate in a longer position with that long fascicle length. Plus, you've got the added effect of the extra strength. So it's a win-win.
Because it's creating the strength through that really heavy lengthening, and then the muscle is fundamentally getting better at it because it's getting used to this thing. It's just used to be resisting as it lengthens.
Yeah, because eccentric contractions and concentric don't work the same. They train the muscles in the motor unit and the nervous system in completely different ways. For example, when you work eccentric, things like your titin and your collagen of the muscle, the elastic properties of the muscle, the parts that don't actually use energy, they actually are engaged a lot more. Yeah. So they kind of like hold on like a rubber band effectively and lengthen out. Whereas when you contract concentrically, when you move forwards, things just tighten up by the muscles.
And we talk about that, and this is going a little bit.
Sorry.
We talk about actin and myosin a lot, and titin's only really probably come into its own in terms of
3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so mind share of sports scientists, but it's probably a reasonably big deal. And the eccentric component, as it ties into that, I think is important. It's a good name too, titin. I'm much more excited about
titin than actin,
myosin, whatever. Yeah.
And there's also some research going on in the last couple of years. I haven't really read too much into it, but I've just seen it around. That when you do eccentric work, your muscles become more collagen. The density of collagen inside the muscles increases.
Really?
So your muscles become more tendinous, which makes them less likely to rip.
And more elastic, but
elastic, but it's like going from a rubber band to like one of those power bands.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I love the eccentric. I didn't even know about that.
I'll see if I can find a link to something. I might be making that up, but something along those lines. I'm pretty confident I'm not.
I'm picking it up.
So fascicle length, eccentric strength, tighten, all these things. That's why a Nordic is so important.
And on top of that, it's very hard to find good hamstring exercises that really isolate where there isn't potential for other muscles to jump in and compensate.
Your calf, your back, your glutes, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you flick it with your quads even.
Yeah, it's just there's so many of them. It's like, yeah, it's a good exercise and I can feel it a bit in my hammies, but I feel it a bit in my calves, or even some people talk about using, well, why aren't you just doing a heavy RDL or a heavy deadlift, but really focusing on slowing down on the way down? And yes, you do that, but the glute, because of the way the force is lined up, the glutes are still sort of in control at that pivot point.
Or that's one option.
Yeah.
Or you go even straighter to the leg to really load the hamstring, which, yes, it loads the hamstring significantly. The problem is you then start really loading the back as well. And so to get really heavy at that to the level that a Nordic is, and because the other thing with hamstrings is it's biarticular.
Yeah.
It works from the knee and the hip. So if you do your RDL or straight leg deadlift from the top, the problem is you end up loading the glutes either through hinging to the hip, or you go straighter leg and you really start loading the back. And so you can create a lot of erector dominance.
Yeah.
And then you've got stronger hammies, but now you might have created a back problem or a back tightness problem at the same time. Whereas when you go Nordic, you can go really heavy from the start, and there's no real back or glute.
It's just great. You're just hitting the muscle proper hard. And also, I think you're balancing out sport a bit. I think sport with change of direction, we get so much eccentric load on the court. Every time you do a hard cut,
especially lateral cord too, vastus lateralis.
Yeah.
It just, and if you look at an athlete's cord, the outside of the cord just goes like this.
Yeah.
And everything else just sort of stays how it is.
Yeah. And all that really hard eccentric work, we sort of don't get the same level of, just in day-to-day sport, the same level of hard eccentric work into the hammies. So it's almost like you've just got to supplement it slightly in the gym, I think, to then balance it out against...
To bring yourself back to neutral.
Yeah.
Neutral hammy. Because the one exception would be high-speed running. That's where you get a lot of hammy work at that, and especially at that long position. But the problem is sport is so much acceleration dominant. You spend so much time, even in sports like footy on a bigger field, you still spend your ratio of sprints done between 0 and 40 minutes versus sprints done between 40 and 80 minutes. It's so stacked, like 90 to 10 stacked in this favour. So you're going to spend so much more time accelerating and detailing and cutting than you are really opening up like Usain Bolt would, for example. Whereas those guys, once you're top speed and flying, bit of quad, a bit of glute, bit of hammy, it's all working together to keep that knee and that hip moving. But when you're out of the blocks or in a pack situation, or
basketball, 16 metres, foul line to foul line.
Netball, 10-metre thirds, Soccer field, the boxes are tiny,
And even other sports like combat sports, like there's hardly any of that. So it's almost like it's a missing vitamin. Like it's just this component that you're not really getting, and if you are neglecting your Nordics,
the Titan vitamin.
Nice. This is the nerdiest one.
Yeah, sorry.
I feel like jock nerd.
This is episode 50. We have been pretty nerdy though. This is wrong with it.
Okay. But the great thing, the thing that I am really loving is it's also an area where you can generate safe competition.
Actually, on safe competition, our reluctance to do Nordics was like, we're going to start them and we're going to tear 2 hammies in the first couple of weeks. We're going to go mass, we're going to roll them out.
Everyone's going to get competitive.
But it was Keith. Actually, it was like...
So Keith D'Souza, great physio, great friend of us and Core Advantage.
Was an intern here.
Thanks, Keith.
He was like, we're like, aren't people going to... He's like, they'll fall before they tear hammy, trust me. And we're like, oh yeah, they will. Yeah, right. Okay. So we just assume they'll just go, and then rip them up.
Because you do the first time you do them, and because people will say to me, it looks pretty tough, but they look at it. The equivalent is they look at someone doing a Nordic and they go, it's kind of like someone doing a bench press doing a push up.
Yeah.
They don't have a sense of the tearing sensation and how hard it is.
The feeling like you're about to fall apart.
Everyone's like, if you've got someone can pull around 140 kilos off the ground.
On a deadlift or a core lift,
And they're kind of like, I do 140 kilos, bring it.
Yeah.
And you put them in there like,
the position just really dials in that knee flexion or that knee anti-extension component of the hamstring, which doesn't get hit with, say, a deadlift or an RDL.
Yeah.
And so you really get to focus on that other end of the hammy. Full disclosure though, it doesn't hit bicep femoris.
No.
Completely. So it's not perfect.
Yeah.
We're still looking for a solution to that. Something more straight leg, like a straight leg bridge type variation might be the answer there.
So the argument, if you're wanting to not do, if you were doing a debate and there's an argument against the Nordics, the killer argument would be that, well, it's not targeting the upper head of bicep fem, which is where you get 70% of high speed running.
80%. Yeah. 80% of all hamstring strains are in the bicep femoris, and 80% are at top speed running. It's the 80-80 rule.
Yeah. And so if you put on that absolute functional lens, where it's like it has to hit that exact muscle and mimic that pattern. You go, oh, Nordics are actually not that good. But sometimes it's not about it. Sometimes it's like, it's about getting a dose of
You need newtons. You just need force.
A dose of strength. Exactly.
To bring the entire global hammy up. And then if you've got someone who's got problems, or say someone who does spend time at top speed running like a footballer or a track athlete.
Or Candice Lostos.
Then you go some RDLs, or you go some straight leg work, or some, something like that, exactly.
So we were worried that we were going to have a whole bunch of tears. And all we've had is a bunch of awesome smack talk in the gym.
A lot of video content. Thanks everyone. Yeah, a lot of smack, because everyone's now like, they want to beat, because everyone's like, can you grab the camera? I think today's going to be the day I'm going to get the Nordic.
Yeah, because the holy grail is the...
straight hips, nose to cushions.
And then back up. Yeah.
Which Hayden can now do 7 of, Hayden Mitchell.
He can do it, and he chats. He can do it for reps.
He'll do one, he'll adjust the cushion. He's like, hey, James, can you grab my purse? Trez can now do 2 or so, I think.
Yeah, which is... And when you consider, like, we give Trez Trez thrives on being given a hard time. Like,
he loves the pressure.
Yeah. And so, but when you consider that
he's 115 kilos,
and if like a lot of it's up here,
he's got a lot of armor on that body.
Yeah, so he does that. That's very impressive.
Here's 2 Nordics. The newtons, if you measured the actual power and their strength output compared to Hayden.
Because we did when we had the Nord board here. What would he?
5, season of 5 and 600 newtons. Which the cutoff for like.
Oh, talk about that. Yeah.
There's a cutoff point, and this is from David Opar and Timmons group, and who's. The other
let's go back. Let's talk about the risks of hamstring injury. I think that's fascinating. And then,
Yep. So hamstring injury, the 3 risks are age.
Risk factors are
so previous hamstring injury, as you know one. So if you've done your hammy once, you're likely to do it again because one, you've got the tear already in there, and you've got a predisposition due to your anatomy or for it, whatever. Yep. Age, which is really depressing. It's 23.
23.
It's not old.
If you're over 23.
Yeah. It's a previous injury, old, and then having hamstring strength under a Newton measure, which Newton's just a measure of force, under 377 newtons.
And that's hamstring strength as measured on a Nordic.
So yeah, it's a very Nordic measure, and so that's directly correlated to like if you're 28, you've done your hammy before, and you've got a strength under 377, you're pretty much guaranteed to do it again in the next 12 months.
But the really cool thing is, if you get your hamstring strength on the Nordic above the cutoff of
377, pretty sure. Yep.
Then you can be a 30-year-old 5-time hammy tearing person, and
statistically,
and reduces off to the same level of risk as a 20-year-old never done a hammy.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Like,
I'll link to the graph. I've got a photo of it, and the graph's just like 28-year-olds up here, the 20-year-olds here, and the 20-year-old just flatlines as they get stronger because they're young and they've done. But the 28-year-old, as soon as they get stronger, just their risk just plummets.
Yeah. And
so you can basically via the Nordic effectively, because that's what the studies are done. You can effectively inoculate your chance of having.
Yeah. And so that's what I like. What gets me excited is the idea of we're putting this thing in that is encouraging stronger hammies for a better co-contraction from an ACL perspective, just better general performance and robustness, but also the idea that if we're really diligent with it, wouldn't it be cool to have this huge cohort of athletes who it's just like core advantage athletes never do a hammy. Like I really like that.
So Trez, his numbers, so 377 is the cutoff number. Trez has done a hammy before, I believe he's done one. Yeah, and he had weak, like he said, so I think quads like this and hammies like little kittens.
So the root cause of, so Trez had 2 ACLs, so did his ACL playing gridiron, returned to play.
Right on the 12-month mark.
Right on the 12-month mark, cleared by his physio, cleared by everyone, had put in what he thought was all the work.
This is before he started us, so he did the first ACL, did the second one, and then came to us after that.
Came to us. And I think the root cause of it was he had horrible cutting technique because he was a foot out in front, extremely rotated.
Landed with the heel really aggressively.
It was just like it was how to do your ACL 101 was exactly how he moved instinctively. Whatever. Yep. But also he had this really interesting imbalance where he had these very, very, very strong quads, like really strong, and then these absurdly weak, hammies. I mean, it was like
it was quads, glutes, and nothing in between.
To use a car metaphor, he was, Ferrari and Barina. Like it was just really, really imbalanced. So it took a lot, and it took ages to get his hammies even vaguely strong.
It took 11 months of the 14-month rehab to get the hammies even close. And then once we hit 11, though, we seemed to hit a point where it's just like...
It was an inflection point, wasn't it?
Where I think it might have been because he could get more time and attention on the Nordic. He could really get to sort of 30 degrees of extended, like from the ground before.
Because for a long time he was too weak in the hammies to get himself strong in the hammies.
Yeah. And just every week added a Newton or two, added a little bit of force. And then once he got there, it just really took off. But his numbers have been in the 6s now for sure. Because he was in the 550s and 580s when we measured. That was before he even played. So now he's back playing and he's doing full Nordic. So I reckon he'd be, so 377 is the cutoff as measured on soccer players in that study. I reckon Trez would be 600. So he's in the tank. Because he's moving like a lot of weight.
Yeah. So we've talked up how good they are and why we love them. I think we've nerded out. We've gone full.
2 Nordics. Start gently.
Yeah, and start gently. And there's different ways you can do it. Some people will do it where they're controlling range at the start, so they'll just hang on for a few degrees and then drop to the ground. So that's one way to approach it, and gradually try and eke more range into it. So you hold on for longer and longer.
So 5 degrees, 7, 10, and so on. Yep.
And so you're ramping up your range over time. Or you can do it where you are ramping up your load by chasing more range but deloading the exercise.
Assisted. Some people, if they've got the contraption, they put a band around so like on their armpits, and so they use the band to do that. Yeah, I found that very uncomfortable when I tried it.
And I feel like you're just too nervous.
Yeah, you're just worried the band's going to snap and whip past your
armpits.
armpits.
I don't know, it's just, I didn't,
the other option is the Swiss ball, which we love. You can use the Swiss ball and you can sort of do like a little mini push-up on it.
Yeah, I think that was a really good way to do it. But whatever you do, I think if you're serious about athletic performance, and if you think that the standard compound exercises you're doing in the gym are adequate for your eccentric hamstrings, I think you're misguided.
Because that's where we started. Because we started thinking that our core lift arabesque combination was enough.
We're doing the shapes, but it's just not the same.
And when you look at the EMG stuff, core lift is just glutes, which is what we're after.
Yeah, but it's glutes, bit of hammy, bit of quad, but
we needed something to top up the hammy to balance out that sport and that cutting and that change of direction stuff.
So, Nordics for the win.
I think that's enough Nordic nerding for now.
Okay.